Yes. So while I talk about all these things that have been going on with bees, I'm going to try to answer or to talk about 5 questions or 4 questions that we have. The first one is, what are bees, and talk about bee diversity. And second, what are they important? And this is related to bees and agriculture. Third, why should we care about bees? And this is related to the threats and the diversity and loss drivers. And finally, how can we help bees, or what can we do from the community perspective, or from the people's perspective. So the first things that I want to talk about is, what are bees? And usually we're going to find lots of insects that are also doing a pollinator or pollinator function. But the most important thing about bees is that they do have morphological structures to collect the pollen and to transport this pollen from plant to plant or from flower to flower. So whenever we start talking about bee diversity, and when we think about bee diversity, we usually think about honeybees. And then we find out, or when we start studying more about bees, then we find out that there are more bees, like the bumblebees, like the stingless bees, which is like the main group that I have been working or that I worked with when I was in Colombia. And then some other native bees, which are like the orchid bees, sweat bees, and also oil bees. Some of these are really important because they are not only in the tropics, but because of the threats that I'm going to talk about further, they are coming actually to Florida. So the distribution range is actually expanding a little bit. Okay, got it. And then there are also differences between males and females, and the diversity is it's pretty great. So whenever we talk about bees, we have like more than 20,000 species of bees in the whole world, which is a lot. Some of them are only restricted to some areas, like in Australia, and some of them are only restricted to north, like the States and part of Europe. And then when we talk about what you have in the States, then you guys have like 4,000 species of bees. So this country has a lot of bees. The diversity that you have here is amazing. And the diversity that you have in Florida is more amazing because you have 300 species of bees just here in the peninsula. However, well, when we talk about the diversity that we have in Colombia is a little bit more than 1,500 bees. And this is because we have the stingless bees. So we have lots of species. But if you have only wild bees, then, I mean, the diversity compensates a little bit. So this is like the distribution that we have for stingless bees. They are distributed in all the tropics, not only in the neotropics, but they are also distributed in Africa and in part of Asia. They are really important in Colombia because we have found the way to start working or to start raising some of these bees to produce or to get some business going. So there are like between 100 and 130 species of bees. They are distributed from the sea level to over the 300, 400 meters in the Andes. And almost the 28% of these species that we have in Colombia, they are important for the meliponiculture. And the meliponiculture is the same thing as beekeeping, but with stingless bees. So people are using them to get also honey and to get also some pollination products. It is important to talk about them and the difference between the honeybees because they have a different kind of entrance to the beehive. They have a different behavior when they need to protect the nest, and they also have many, for every genus that you can imagine. For stingless bees, there is a different behavior. And they are also able to pollinate or to do bus pollination, which is super important to pollinate all the peppers, tomatoes, all the solanaceae. So these bees are really important also, not only in Colombia, but also in Mexico because of this bus pollination that they have. It's like the bumblebees. So since we don't have bumblebees commercially available to pollinate these kinds of plants, the stingless bees take a really important role. So what do bees eat, and what bees are important to agriculture? So the first thing that I want to talk about when I say that they are important to agriculture is that all bees, not only stingless bees and honeybees, but also wild bees, is because they increase, or they are able to increase the yield of crops in 90%. So if you can see, if you take a look at these maps, what we are looking here, what this paper is showing us, is that the agriculture dependence on pollinators since 1961 to 2012, it's been increasing. So in the first part, we just see that not all the world is dependent on pollinators, or not all the agricultural crops are dependent on pollinators, but up to 2012, most of the world is actually dependent directly on pollinators. But okay, so another thing that I forgot to mention is that if we take a look at Colombia, I don't know if you can see my mouse. Anyway, if you take a look to South America, probably you cannot see, or it is reflected that Colombia doesn't change about the dependence on pollinators. But actually, it was around 2018 that at the Universidad Nacional, we started to work on passion fruits in Colombia, which are it is a really important crop because many people, some of these are endemic fruits to Colombia, and many people are relying on these fruits to get their business going. So one of the important things about these passion fruits is that they depend not on the honeybee, but they depend on this bee, which is a carpenter bee. And some of these bees, their population is declining or is decreasing. But what we did in this study is that we found out that whenever we increase the pollination with the presence of bees, or we try to do cross-pollination, then the more fruits we were able to get. So basically, it is really important, or it was really important to find out that these crops, or this passion fruit, which is super important in Colombia, is actually depending on bees to get fruit. So the production is still going on, or the problem is still there because the population are decreasing at some point. So this is why should we care, or the threats and the diversity loss drivers that we have. So this started on 2010, 2006, I guess, when people started to talk about the colony collapse disorder, and that the beehives were decreasing, and that the bees were in danger, and that the bees were about to extinguish, and things like that. And what I wanted to show you with this map is that, yes, it is part of truth, but what they have been taking a look at is the number of the beehives, which is like the honeybee. And then if you see, it's been changing in different countries. So the annual growth in the number of beehives has been decreasing in North America, in Europe, but in some of the countries in South America, it's been actually increasing a little bit. So the honeybees, they are not decreasing worldwide. However, the wild bees, they are decreasing worldwide. All the population are decreasing. So for example, another research or another work that we tried to do in Colombia was to take 9 species of bees different than the honeybee, and then we tried to make a model of where here in the left or in the maps that you can see all in red, here how the population are distributed at this moment. And all the red portions are where the bees are right now. But with this model, we try to plot what would happen or what will happen in about 50 years. And then what we can see is that, well, the bees will not get a lot of areas where they can be in about 50 years. I mean, there is no red portions, or there is not more red portions for the same 9 species. So even though that in some of the studies they have been saying that the honeybees are decreasing, what we care about or what our concern is the wild bees population, because they are losing distribution ranges. Another study that we did is that we went to 27 cemeteries in Colombia, and then this was with the university, in conjunction with the National University of Colombia and then the University of Quindío. And in both, we went to some other department in some other parts of the Central Andes, and we went to 27 sites. We checked for, we were able to get 364 nests from 8 different species. And what we found, and this is just the preliminary data, so we're still working on trying to get like differences or significant differences, but I wanted to show you the relationships or the correlations that we found in with this study. And there are 2 important things. The first one is the number of species of bees, and these are like the green areas. The first part is the green areas, and the second part here on the right is the agricultural areas. So the number of species of bees actually increased a little bit when we found cemeteries in natural areas, but it decreased in places where the cemeteries were located in agricultural areas. And this is the same thing with the number of nests, because the number of nests is actually increasing in natural areas, but is decreasing in agricultural areas. So again, one of the important drivers that leads to loss diversity, or that leads to population diversity, is agricultural systems or urbanization or habitat fragmentation. So they are facing this, the population are facing this issue, and they're decreasing. So how can we help? And then finally, we found, or we are trying to find a solution. And here's when I come to UF and one of the labs at the entomology department, and now I'm trying to work on trying to figure out what solution can we bring to bees, and what can we what could be the contribution that we can do to protect pollinators. So in these plots, or what we have here, is that we're trying to see, or we're trying to get, how is it that different kinds of plants, native and non-native plants to Florida, are changing their resource value according to different irrigation treatments, because climate change is also a cause of pollinator habitat decrease. So we're trying to check the effects of this water availability on the resource value of different plants for pollinators. Basically, what do bees want? So in order to do this, the first thing that we had to do was choose 2 sites. I'm working right now in North Central Florida, in Citra, and I'm also working at North Florida Research and Education Center in Quincy. And then we were able to plant, I guess, more than 480 plants in each of the sites. And then this is important because people that doesn't have to do with the entomology department, they were able to volunteer to help me plant these almost like 400 plants, at least in Citra. And we have people from the TCD who went there, and then people from design, and people from the anthropology department, and people from the engineering department who actually volunteered to help us plant some of the plots that we have. And okay, so we have 2 different irrigation treatments. One is a full irrigation treatment, and it's all the plants are getting 3 hours of daily water, and the partial irrigation treatments, then the plants are getting just 10% of this water, so that the plants get stressed, and we see how the pollen and the nectar and all the floral traits are actually changing. And if in these climatic conditions so adverse, the bees are actually able to go and get some food or some resources. So basically what I'm doing is that I'm going every month, and I've been doing this for the last year, to count flowers and to count pollinators. Also, I do hand collections. And after I do hand collections, I also check pollen from bees. And I am also doing a taxonomic work by identifying all the bees and all the pollinators that we are collecting in those sites. And I'm going to show you just what we have right now, just some preliminary results also. And well, it's not surprising that so far I just found, or we found, that bees are actually going or are visiting more frequently plants under full irrigation treatment, and also native plants to Florida. Why is this going on, or why is it that this might be happening? Because probably plants that are native to some areas are the plants that can adapt to the soils and the systems and the irrigation and the droughts that the areas have. So whenever people are trying to say that they are planting for pollinators, but they do not make like a quick research, or they do not get advice from a local nursery, or they just plant like random flowers, probably they are not providing good resources to bees, because the bees are actually not going to some other non-native plants. And finally, one of the other things that I wanted to show you today was this couple of graphics here. So the first one is, you might think, and I have it here, this apis in pink. You might think that apis, or the honeybee, is like the bee that you're gonna find in all the flowers. Like, why are we doing this? Is it gonna be like full of honeybees? No, it's not. No, the plots are not full of honeybees. Actually, the honeybees is just a portion, it's just a small portion of all the bees that are visiting these flowers. The amount of bees, or the wild bees, that we have is significantly greater than the amount of honeybees that we can have. Also, there is another like important thing, and is that bumblebees are actually preferring the non-native plants. And why is it that this happened? Probably is because some of these non-native plants present more nectar than some of the native plants that we have here. And then I guess that my takeaway message with this graphic is that the diversity that we can have in a garden or in a domestic garden by planting some of these plants is unbelievable comparing to the diversity that we might think that we have just by thinking that we're gonna get just only honeybees. So I just have like a couple of takeaway messages that I wanted to share with you today. There are many bees, but they have floral preferences. So one of the things that they say here in Florida and that I want to take away when I come back is just there are right plants and a right place for each of those plants. And also because those right plants are providing the good resource or the good the good resource or the good pollen for these bees. So pollinators and especially bees are facing population declines. Not only the honeybee, probably the honeybee is doing okay, probably the honeybee is doing well, but the rest of the bees, they are not doing so well. The third thing is that bees provide pollination services to the communities, but we could always enhance the presence of pollinators in all areas. Like if, for example, if you are working with different communities and you are trying to enhance crops, or if you're trying to enhance some business, probably you can also introduce some of these bees in the communities that you're working with, but also introduce some of the resources for these bees to be able to thrive. And finally, preserving the bees is, I consider that it is something tangential to all the areas that we have, at least in this TCD program, because many people can have, or many people can be working with different things or with different different areas of knowledge. But at the end, if you're working with communities, at some point, I am sure that these communities are actually getting services from bees or from pollination in some way. So yeah, I guess my invitation today is just to share the message and just consider bees when you are out there also doing your field work in your different areas. Okay. Yeah, okay. And thank you so much for the time today. I don't know if you have any questions or something that you would like to talk about further.